Hey, this is my updated Hero Vouchers guide. A while ago, we got an update that changed some things around. A lot of the heroes that took vouchers are now flexible. So here are the new rules, all right? Listen up. So base game heroes will all require Flux. It's a little complicated, so I'm going to do it like this, where if you go to the collection book, you can go to any of the heroes in the base game section. Even the mythic heroes will require Flux. But any campaign heroes, including these guys down here, will require vouchers. And then the main rule in the collection book changes, if I'll show it again on screen here, is that any event heroes that were accessible through llamas that are not mythic now require Flux, meaning the only heroes that require vouchers now are mythic event heroes and heroes that are not available in llamas. If you consult the yearly timeline, link to that down below, this will be coming up later. Basically, every single hero in this event store section will all require vouchers if you get them out of season. If you've actually seen my old hero voucher video, all of these suggestions are still good. So if you've seen that, you could probably skip this one, but since some of those heroes are now flexible, I wanted to make an updated and concise guide. I also did the exact same thing with my weapon vouchers video. Link to that down below because weapons and heroes go hand in hand. I've got tons of videos on this subject, so subscribe for more of that. Now, before I get into hero recommendations, I want to talk about what vouchers are and how to get them. So hero recruitment vouchers basically allow you to get any event hero out of seasons. Now, the event that we're in now has a bunch of bunny heroes available, meaning if I wanted to go to the Halloween section and it's not currently available, I could go all the way down here to the Fortnitemares Heroes. If I want Willow, I don't recommend this. You can spend a hero recruitment voucher to get her out of season. I recommend spending wisely. That's that yearly timeline that I mentioned would come back up. This is an extremely useful tool. Depending on when you're watching this video at any time of the year, just look at the expected return date on the left and try to make a wise decision. For example, I'm going to recommend a lot of Dino heroes later on in this video. Well, if you're watching this on July 24th, you don't need to voucher Southie. He's available now. And if you're watching this in that time range, you don't need to get Luna because she'll be available next week. So depending on when you see this video, you should consult this because realistically, you never actually need vouchers. That is something a lot of new players kind of forget. I know new players see this wall of heroes and they see this big YouTuber recommending all these amazing loadouts with a bunch of heroes you don't even have, and you just want to get everything all at once. That is not possible. You kind of just have to play through the events and get things as they come out, and vouchers only save you time. That's why I say you don't need any, because every single hero does come back around. There are some heroes that don't ever return, but they're all repeat heroes. There are no unique hero abilities that do not return. Every single ability comes back around. So vouchers only save you time. I would recommend catering towards stuff that came out in an event that just passed you. Like if you're playing on June 21st, well, every hero I just showed in the shop will be gone only to return next year. So that would be an amazing time save. So my recommendation for spending vouchers is saving as much time as possible. Now, if you're looking to get vouchers, this is where I'm going to recommend my Ventures Rewards video. They're pretty much the same every single season, but I'm currently recording this during our 15th Venture season. I show this all the time. This is a great chart. You will get 200 legendary Flux per season, which because so many heroes and weapons are now flexible is basically hero vouchers or weapon vouchers, depending on what you need. And then weapon vouchers are at 13, and then the coveted hero voucher, today's topic, is at level 20. So getting vouchers and Flux is actually really easy in Ventures. Level 22 here is when you get 200 Flux and 2 vouchers, which is super, super nice. It's very attainable. You get 1 per season, and Venture seasons come around, as the timeline suggests, about every 2.5 seasons. Every new colored section is a new season, so you get about 5 per year. Now, some of the heroes you want require Flux. The 2 or 3 main ways to get Flux are Ventures, as I always mentioned, but the other 2 are the weekly shop, which is only about 50 per week. Every once in a long while, we'll get 150 Flux instead of 50, but it's really not a lot. And the collection book. That's the real way. Thank you to Stormgod for all of this information. He sent me a nice breakdown of every single collection book level that you get Flux, and it actually repeats after level 401. So you are definitely welcome to pause this or screenshot it for your own use. This is when you get all the Flux in the collection book. Now, I recommend new players do not just fill up your book with every single hero and weapon that you have. I recommend keeping copies, okay? You don't want to just max out the collection book at all costs because it's not typically worth it. It's kind of ironic to put away a hero you really, really need just to get another hero. That's kind of a net neutral in my opinion. I don't recommend that, but if you have extras of the heroes that you've been unlocking and you've been opening lots of llamas, which is really, really great for manuals and weapon and trap designs, then you can put those copies in the collection book and get lots of Flux from that. All right, without further ado, let's get into not just every hero you should voucher, but the top picks. Now, I cannot tell you exactly what you need. This depends entirely on your playstyle, what heroes you really find enjoyable, what loadouts you find enjoyable, what time of the year you're watching. Like I said earlier, I'm going to recommend Dennis Jr. first and foremost, but if he's available in your season right now, don't get him, all right? So, Dennis Jr. is the first of the top heroes I'm going to recommend, purely because he gives you totally rocking out. Ironically, Dennis Jr. himself isn't that amazing, unless you're using axes for some reason. Big shout out to the Clax, an amazing weapon, by the way. But totally rocking out is the best team perk in the game for damage. If you're trying to do as much damage as possible, that's the guy you want. I don't need to say much else because it's super good. You do need some of these rad heroes to power that team perk. However, all of these are flexible and available in the rad llamas, so it's kind of outside of the scope of this video. Now, on the topic of totally rocking out, we're actually going to go to the road trip heroes to point out Tactical Assault Sledgehammer. If you're running totally rocking out, upping your crit rating by a ton, you're going to want to crit as hard as possible, and he is the best hero in the game for that. For assault weapons and SMGs, he is an absolute powerhouse. I have a ton of videos on my channel showcasing like triple crit damage builds, getting up over 700% crit damage, and that's from Tactical Assault Sledgehammer. He is super, super useful and very much worth a voucher. And the other hero I want to recommend with totally rocking out is actually available as I'm recording this, and that is Rabbit Raider Jonesy. Snipers are some of the best weapons in the entire game, and he makes their crit damage go up as much as Sledgehammer. It's super, super good. Even if you're not running totally rocking out, he and Sledge are really good in support. Anytime you're running a sniper or an assault weapon or an SMG with a crit build, just use Rabbit Raider or Sledge, whichever one fits the bill. Very recommended with totally rocking out. Now, as I alluded to earlier in the video, I'm going to be going over the Blast from the Past heroes. This is kind of the alternative. Totally rocking out is really, really good for high damage, low defense. Blast from the Past is really, really good for high health, high tankiness, and relatively lower damage. And I'm going to recommend the best ones. The first one that I think is honestly the best is Izza. This is one of those boring recommendations where she doesn't up your damage, she doesn't up anything but your armor. She makes you super, super tanky and is really, really good in pretty much every Blast from the Past build. Taking less damage is amazing. And then Paleoluna. She is our queen for melee damage. She is super, super good with a high attack speed melee, upping your health by a ton with Blast from the Past. She is fantastic and always one of my favorite heroes to recommend for a voucher. Hey, watching this back, I realized I kind of breezed past Paleoluna. I want to reiterate that she is truly one of, if not the best melee hero in the entire game. I made an entire video on ninja loadouts that goes way more in depth. I highly recommend checking it out as she is definitely a hero you don't want to skip. Now, if you want to do a little bit of damage with your Blast from the Past build, Rex Jonesy is fantastic in support. It's not a ton of damage, granted, but you do need 2 dinos to activate Blast from the Past, and if you're using a ranged weapon, Rex Jonesy works with all of them, so he can give you a little bit of an extra boost. And then a hero that I recommend in a lot of weird scenarios is Fossil Southie. Fossil Southie is super good for farming. You can use him for energy-based loadouts, and that is super, super good because energy-based loadouts can be good for abilities if you're dashing around with phase shift or spamming grenades or something, or if you're using a melee that uses a lot of lunging or heavy attacks. That's definitely where Fossil Southie comes into play, and he is an extremely universal hero, very worth vouchering if it makes sense for you. And then Parasaur Jess is a little bit of a niche pick. I don't recommend her as like the top thing you should voucher, but as I am recording this during dungeon season, I put her in support where every time you phase shift when I'm dashing through the dungeons, it heals you by a lot. And something else worth noting is that she doesn't require Blast from the Past. You might have noticed that with every other dino that I showed, they actually require you to have your shield depleted. She does not. So even if you're not running Blast from the Past, maybe you're using an ability, totally rocking out build or something weird like that, then she can be really good in support for just healing you as you go. Again, it's niche. You can't always make good use of her, but I figured I'd recommend her. Now, going back to the springtime heroes, I have to recommend Stoneheart Farrah. She was not even in the game when I first ever made a hero voucher video, and she is amazing. If you're running bows, she needs to be either in support if you're using Rabbit Raider in the lead, or she needs to be in the lead with Rabbit Raider in support. She basically makes every single bow into a group damage bow, and if you pair this with the vacuum tube bow, that thing chains a ton. It is super powerful, super satisfying. She is what you want if you're running bows, and bows are amazing, so it's a pretty good pickup. Now, I mentioned the Fortnitemares Heroes earlier, and I mentioned being careful about when you spend, because right now as I'm recording this, Chaos Agent is available for free in dungeons, but you might be watching this any time of the year, so I gotta recommend Chaos Agent. If he's not available, definitely pick him up. He is one of the most accessible heroes in the game. I don't want to stress this too much with every hero, but he is available in dungeons, which is available most of the year. It's like 40% of the year has dungeons available as of recording this. That might change in the future, but he is available a lot. My point is he's really, really good because anytime you use an ability, it instantly reloads your weapon. That works with phase shift, and that works with the strongest build I've ever used. Basically, you can queue up a big explosion damage every single time you phase shift. Shift, and Chaos Agent makes that possible. He's extremely useful. I recommend him heavily. I've made tons of videos on him. I can't say it enough. He's awesome. So if you are playing this out of season, again, dungeons are usually right around the corner, but he's still amazing and worth a voucher if you want to grab him. Now, a Fortnitemares hero that is actually technically a Homebase hero is Cassie Littman. She's available in the Fortnitemares season, but she is our farming queen. I mentioned Fossil Southie earlier. One of those abilities you can spam with Fossil Southie is anti-material charge. And if Casey Clip is in the lead, she will be giving you a 100% chance to drop additional ingredients. That is incredibly useful. She is amazing in the lead, amazing in the support. If you are farming as an Outlander, you want Clip in your build. She is one of my top recommendations to Voucher. Even though she's the last top recommended pick that I'm listing here in this video, she is definitely to be considered. One of the best heroes in the entire game. Everybody has to farm. I use her in Ventures. I use her when I'm low on materials. I am an endgame player with a massive inventory, and when I run low on Oxy, I throw on Littman because she is just fantastic for that. All right, now that I got sort of the top recommended picks out of the way, let's say you have everything I mentioned, or none of that striked your interest. Let's go through the rest of the game and what you might want to consider vouchering. I'm going to mention a couple of things here. Campaign heroes are technically voucherable, but they're all campaign heroes. I don't really recommend picking up any of them with a voucher because you shouldn't have to. Only if you want to fill your collection book, and that's not something that an endgame player needs me to tell them. Unfortunately, Buckshot Raptor is ironically the best campaign hero and the only one you can't voucher. That shotgun crit damage is insane, but like I said, you can't voucher him, so that's kind of outside of the scope of this video. The constructors, everything, I'm not really going to recommend any of these because you should already have a copy. Now, in the interest of time, I am going to be skipping some heroes. Thank you, Archer, for putting together this list of every single voucherable hero. I believe there is one or two missing from this. He might have made a correction, like Azealia Clark, I think is available through Fluxing. But nevertheless, these are every hero you can voucher. And if I skip any, like these wild heroes, it's because I don't recommend them. I didn't skip them because I forgot. I skipped them because Gia and Fenix are, as of recording, not that amazing. Wild animals are pretty much a letdown in the game. So in the interest of time, I will not be discussing heroes that aren't really that good. That said, we do have kind of a sleeper pick, Major Oswald. So, Major Oswald makes it where your Warcry can snare enemies. That's not that great, but in the lead, enemies take 25% increased weapon damage. That is, I'm not going to get into the crazy math, but the best bonus for Warcry in the game. Because even though Banshee exists and she gives you 25.5% weapon damage, that stacks on the base damage of your weapon and ignores all the damage perks on your weapon, like your elemental perk or any damage perks that you have on top of that or any damage perks you have in hero support. He makes it so that enemies take 25% increased damage after all those bonuses. So it actually ends up being way more damage than any other Warcry hero. Warcry is kind of a not great ability in this game, so I can't super recommend him, but I don't want him to go unmentioned. Now, the Steel Wool characters are, again, campaign heroes, so I'm going to be skipping over them. I already mentioned pretty much all of the Dinos. Those are usually the best ones to use. Triceratops is horrible healing. She is functionally useless. Ankylokyle is the same story. Jurassic Ken looks good on paper, but I'll drop this video down below. You guys can see that entire video. I tried out every single ability and I tried to make them work and I just couldn't do it. So that's pretty much it for the Dinos. Now, going to the road trip heroes, I mentioned Sledge earlier, but right next to him is Redline Ramirez. For the same reason that Rabbit Raider Jonesy is amazing with the bows and the snipers, she gives you straight up sniper damage. Now, 17% damage isn't nearly like as much as the crits with the way the game calculates damage, but if you're running a bow, you want her in support, so definitely pick her up if you have everything I mentioned and want to buff your bow damage. Now, if you weren't already convinced that road trip heroes are amazing, I'm going to give you something else to consider. White Elf Fiona is insanely awesome. Sword, axes, and scythes are three of the best weapon classes in the game, for melees at least. Swords are insanely strong, and upping their crit rating by a flat amount is amazing. Running her in the lead has created one of my favorite builds in the entire game, the Stormblade Boom build. You're probably seeing footage on screen. When you can up the crit rating of weapons and you can run crit damage perks on them, she's insane. Super useful. I run her in support pretty much every single time I run a melee. She is very strong. In fact, White Elf Fiona is the exact reason that my Storm King's Ravager is triple attack and crit damage. She gives you just enough crit chance and support where that crit damage perk is the best option. She is super good, and you definitely don't want to skip her. Now, the pirate heroes are some of the best heroes in the entire game, but pretty much all the good ones, Crossbone Barrett, are fluxible. But there is Blakebeard the Blackhearted, all right? He is available with a voucher, and he gives you a team perk. Yes, this is another team perk recommendation. Blakebeard Stash is a universal team perk that gives you a peg leg melee, a cannonball ranged attack, boom damage, and coconuts and support to heal you endlessly. That is a really, really good team perk for Ventures. I recommend this anytime in normal missions as well, but it is really, really good for Ventures. I use it almost every season, and he gives you that team perk. He also increases cannonball damage, which includes the Bowler, the Jabberwocky, the Cannonade, not broadsides, I'm sorry, but he does buff the actual cannonballs that the team perk drops you. So super, super good to run him in support with the team perk buffing cannonball damage. You put Crossbones Barrett in support because that 16% damage from coconuts comes from him. Coconuts do not natively give you that. And then you put Privateer Hype to buff the club damage of the peg leg, and you're off to the races. Super good hero to grab. If you want the team perk, he's the one you want to grab. Note, by the way, that team perk is not immediately available. It will give you a hero quest on the side where you're gonna have to collect 5 treasure chests. It's super easy, but a lot of new players don't realize that at first, so just a warning. Now, moving on to Blockbuster Heroes. We got some insane sleeper picks here. Diecast Jonesy is an amazing hero for minigun. The lead we usually use is Commando Spitfire because he reduces the cooldown significantly, but he's actually a base game hero. So if you're looking to up that minigun damage by 25%, Diecast Jonesy in support is amazing. If you want to run him in the lead, you will have an energy minigun, which is great against elemental targets, and it'll do significantly more damage at 50%. Super, super good hero. Highly recommend grabbing him. Right next to him is 8-Bit Demo. He gives you a 20% chance to not consume ammo with explosive weapons. That is actually kind of nuts. That means 1 out of 5 shots, you just won't consume ammo, which is basically a mag size bonus and a discount at the same time. I run him in support with my insane rocket loadout to more than triple the mag size of your rocket launcher. If that sounded insane, I recommend checking out that video down below. 8-Bit Demo is definitely worth grabbing. Also because he is not on the timeline. 8-Bit Demo is one of those very weird heroes that just randomly comes by in the weekly shop. We see him like once a year randomly. So he's actually specifically worth a voucher just because I don't know when you can get him. Something to consider. Now, I mentioned farming earlier with Clip and Southie. Archaeologist is, again, fantastic in that build. Every farming video you've ever seen since she came to the game recommends Archaeologist because she just reduces the energy cost of anti-material charge. That means you can just punch more often. She is super good for farming and definitely worth a voucher. Now, a couple of weird recommendations are Raven and Carbide. So, Raven and Carbide are both lefty and righty heroes. Raven is a super good lead. Bang and Pow is an insanely strong ability. The cooldown is kind of meh, but I recorded a recent video with it. I'll show some unreleased footage of using him and the Dirge song to reduce the cooldown. You do need Where's Lefty, which is just an expansion hero, by the way, so you can kind of get her whenever you want with Flux. That's a super strong loadout in specific, but Raven is amazingly strong. Lefty and righty's super long cooldown makes it a little hard to recommend, but there are some Ventures modifiers that reduce that cooldown and make lefty and righty insanely good. Because of that cooldown, it's hard to recommend him year-round, but he's insanely strong. Carbide, same deal. He is really good for dungeons. I've made many videos on that subject. He is insanely fun. Again, that cooldown's crazy, so it's hard to recommend him, but he's worth considering because it's an amazingly fun hero. Now, going back to the springtime heroes, we've got a couple of energy-based heroes. Fallen Love Ranger Jonesy, in my opinion, is the best universal energy hero in the game, even sometimes better than Southie, because his does give you more energy per second, but it's contingent on you getting kills, and it does the commander perk and support. I think this is intentional by Epic, by the way, because I think they fixed it one update and then like went back to it where instead of 6 energy over 3 seconds, it's 6 energy per second for 3 seconds, which is not overpowered and super useful. It's amazing. Whenever you're getting kills, I mentioned that strongest loadout ever video. I'll plug it again because he is contingent on fueling that build with plenty of energy. And then if you're using melees, Anti-Cuddle Sarah is even better, where every elimination gives you more energy than he does. It's not over time, so you get like less energy per kill, but if you're going into a horde of enemies, you're not exactly standing around waiting for your energy to go up. So if you're using an energy-based melee build where you're using a heavy attack very often, Anti-Cuddle Sarah is fantastic in the lead or in support. So depending on what you're doing, she could be good for both. Now, another hero from this section is Snuggle Specialist. I don't know if she's worth like a voucher. She's more of a support hero. If you're running Dragon Slash, you're probably using Dragon Scorch in the lead, and she could be really great in support because that energy trail is super good for some extra damage. It's not like amazing, but if you're running a Dragon Slash build, you want her in support. So I figured I'd at least mention her. Now down here, there are a couple of sneaky picks, all right? So first and foremost, Stars and Stripes Jonesy. He is essentially a mag-sized perk. That 24% saves you ammo just like 8-Bit Demo. And you can also apply that 24% to the saved ammo. So I'll save you the math. It's basically a 31.7% increase to your mag size, which is actually really, really good. And it's not just a mag size bonus, but you're saving ammo in the process. It's super, super good. I used to use him all the time. The only reason I would ever swap him out is if I'm using Chaos Agent instead. Super, super good hero. Basically a mag size bonus. Highly recommend him. And then Headhunter. She is the key for that insane loadout I mentioned earlier with 8-Bit Demo. That War Cry, giving you that 50% chance, stacks with 8-Bit Demo to basically be a 70% chance not to consume ammo. Again, I'll save you the math. It's basically like a 3.3 times mag size bonus. If you pair that with like the Cannonade, for example, you'll be shooting forever. Super, super fun hero. Super, super strong if you pair it with Rockets. Highly recommend picking them both up because they are amazing. Now, a hero that I regretfully recommend is Ted. He is one of the few heroes that went from being flexible to hero vouchers. It's kind of unfortunate, even though he is accessible in the llamas. Maybe they took him out of the llamas, but you're only really able to get him for like 1 week in Frostnite. I don't love that because it's kind of a downgrade. He used to be the best way to get Happy Holidays. Happy Holidays, as you can see, reduces ability cooldowns by 40%. Super amazing team perk, and he gives you a minigun bonus. It's an amazing thing. I love him, but he's now voucher only. So if you want Happy Holidays, I still recommend him as a voucher, but kind of a downgrade. Now, also in the Frostnite section has so many good heroes. Crackshot is one of the best heroes in the entire game. He is amazing. Pair him with the Storm King Scourge or any heat capacity weapon that never has to reload, or even just a high mag size weapon, and his bonus is staggeringly high. I have made so many videos on him that I can't even plug them on screen. I'll try to link some of them down below. Super, super good hero. Very fun to use. One of my favorites, and definitely worth a voucher. And a more passive build is the Ice King build. You know, there really isn't an Ice King build. Just run him in the lead with all the obvious base heroes like Base Kyle, Power Base Nox, and you're pretty much good to go. He basically makes it where enemies slap your base and they're just frozen for 4 seconds. That is super, super good. And in support, he makes it so that enemies are snared on your base. By walking 15% slower, that means that enemies are effectively taking 15% longer to get through your tunnels, and they're spending that much more time taking damage from your traps. It's a sneakily good hero. It might not be that amazing at first glance, but an amazing pickup nonetheless. Now, a couple of obvious picks here is Lynx Cassandra and Zenith. Now, Lynx, she's our queen for MSK. You pop a kunai, you do way more damage. I've used her in pretty much every Storm King fight I've ever ran. Not the best in normal missions. Link to that video down below if you want to see what I mean, but she's good all around for the Storm King fight, and considering the Storm King fight unlocks 5 of the best weapons in the game, she might be worth a voucher, but again, consult the timeline to make sure you're spending wisely. Zenith, on the other hand, is amazing year-round. He makes it so that sniper crits freeze enemies. Now, when you deal affliction damage, that can crit as well, which re-ups his perk. It is super, super strong. This thumbnail is not clickbait. You can permanently freeze a smasher. Maybe not from like one sniper hit, but if you keep attacking a smasher or a big target like that, they'll just wither away from affliction damage until they die. It's an amazingly useful hero, super, super fun to use, and I highly recommend picking him up. Now, another great hero is Quick Draw Calamity. She is, believe it or not, the highest pistol damage bonus in the lead. It's only for 6 shots, so, you know, whatever. But 60% extra damage is amazing. She pairs really well with short mag-sized weapons like the Jack's Revenge and the Last Word, and she's super fun for that. Pistol users aren't that common, and pistols aren't generally that strong, but she is there, and I'm not going to not recommend her, so there you go. Oh, Fortnitemares, one of the best events in the entire game. We're going to start with Swamp Knight. Swamp Knight makes it so that you can do up to 42% extra damage based on your missing health to mist monsters. That is actually really, really good because realistically, for some of the stronger builds in the game, most enemies, even up to Husky Husk, are not going to survive very long anyway. So he's a great support perk for making sure that smashers and mist monsters die a lot faster. I know that smashers are a mist monster, but considering the health count, they are worth their own category, and he helps kill all of them. I don't recommend him in the lead, but that's something you can consider as well. Arlene Izza, again, is a hero that is maybe not the most obvious, but that life leech scales with the amount of damage you do. I mentioned that Stormblade build earlier. She is really, really good for high damage melee builds where she will keep you alive in the middle of the fight. Super, super good, and it creates this irony where to heal faster, I find myself jumping into combat with hordes of enemies because the more enemies coming in dying to your weapon, the more you're healing. It's a super, super good combo, and she is fantastic. She doesn't work that great in Paleo Luna builds because even though you need a lot of health for that build to function optimally, most of the Paleo Luna weapons are doing like triple attack speed. So the actual weapon damage is quite low. You're just farming Luna damage. So I have not found her to be good in like Blast from the Past support builds, but if you're doing a lot of crit damage or weapon damage with your melee, she is super nice. The last hero I want to mention from the event section is Azealia Clark. I got her wrong earlier when I mentioned she might not be voucherable. She absolutely is, and she's kind of a good pick. Ability energy damage by 15.5%, over and out. That's it. If you're using that energy minigun I mentioned earlier, or really any energy-based ability as your primary output, she'll just buff it by a flat 15.5%. It's kind of funny to use that because that is technically less than Extraterrestrial Rio, just giving you 20%, but she's contingent on shields being full, which is not always something you can control. So if you're looking for a lazy build, she's great in support and can buff your damage by a good amount. And that just about covers it. The raw recording this video is almost 40 minutes, so I'm hoping this gets edited way down. There were a lot of mistakes. This video was a ton of information to compile, and I think I elaborated a lot more than I did in previous videos. So I hope you appreciate the extra information. If I've earned a subscription, then you should click the button. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching, and yeah, have a fun time with your new heroes. And then